Talk Show. Recorded live.
Thank you for tuning in to Freedom Fighters for America Radio. And now the battle hymn of the Republic. Thank you for tuning in to Freedom Fighters for America Radio. I'm happy to announce Mr. Tom Heneghan and Stu Webb Intel Hour.
And it's good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday, September the 9th, 2009. This is Stu Webb. And Tom, how are you this evening?
Well, I'm doing good, Stu. And, of course, I want to thank you for being on the program with me. I'm sorry I was absent for 2 weeks. I had things to deal with. I think we should bring people up to speed right away on what's going on with the healthcare disguise. The president, Mr. Obama, is out there.
POTUS was on the TV tonight, right?
That we need all this healthcare and we need all this spending, and of course, we don't need any of this until we deal with our banking system. And of course, we have quadrillions of derivatives in our banks right now. These are derivatives that have been piled up for years. People, again, want to know what a derivative is. It's basically a IOU, a promissory note, that is taken off the books as a liability and then declared in another account or another bank as an asset. It's a Ponzi scheme, folks. Example, if someone owes you $10 billion, you agree to write off that debt in exchange for a $20 billion payment within 3 years. What happens, of course, is that they declare that as their liability is removed and they create an asset. That's called a credit default swap. That's not an asset. That's a Ponzi scheme. And we can report right now that a Virginia grand jury is looking into a lot of criminal activity going back years, dealing with Bernard Madoff, the Securities Exchange Commission, former SEC Chairman Christopher Cox, the General Electric Corporation, in creating these credit default swaps, these derivatives, not only dealing with the General Electric Medical Systems, but I believe that's Noviation LLC. Is that correct, Stu?
Yeah, Jeb Bush and the $1 trillion Medicare fraud that the Sam LaPerry and Brett Landreth, who was illegally disbarred for representing him in the Kansas City federal court there, they've got the ongoing case. But, yeah, you're right, and it all dovetails back to the Bush-Clinton crime syndicate and these 2 dead U.S. attorneys.
Right,
on the medical part of things.
And if you click on www.stuweb.com, you can see the entire story dealing with the links to the dead U.S. attorneys, dealing with this fraud, Jeb Bush, William Friss. These people are, William Friss was given an opportunity to cut health care costs years ago with a new software program, but it would have cut down the cost overruns on Medicare. And given Noviation was giving campaign contributions to Frist and Jeb Bush and Barney Frank. Cost overruns on Medicare. That's correct.
Hello?
Hello?
Tom, are you there? Sounds like
we're getting hacked. I knew we should have done something before we got
We're okay. Keep going.
Okay, folks, if you don't hear us too well, at times it's because they're coming in to hack us. But back to that, again, these people were getting loaded up with these campaign contributions. They had no real interest in any reform. They had interest in creating derivative fraud that they would use, obviously, to enrich themselves through backdoor campaign contributions, etc. I know this much, that when you get Bernard Madoff, who, of course, is linked to the Ponzi scheme, using the proceeds from his Ponzi scheme to make trades on behalf of people like, some of these politicians aforementioned, and the money is then laundered through the London office, you're talking about a massive criminal conspiracy to loot the U.S. Treasury. And that's what we've seen take place here. We've seen basically the looting of the U.S. Treasury through the backdoor use of derivatives. And the most derivatives, folks, the proceeds, the sale of these derivatives, these financial products, are in offshore accounts, cash accounts, linked to this criminal syndicate. And it was just the other day, Stu, that the Chinese said, we're not even going to deal with this anymore. We're writing off these derivatives. We're not going to pay our carrying charges on these derivatives anymore.
You put up a story on this too, Tom, the posting a brief. China declares economic war on U.S. It is still the derivative stupid. You can find it on stewwebb.com.
And you got to remember, folks, that the Chinese sovereign funds were then looted on behalf of the Bush-Clinton crime family syndicate using these derivatives, using these phony hocus-pocus accounting tricks. And I can tell you right now, when you have a situation like this, we are in a dire circumstance worldwide economically. The UN just announced, and the UN is no credible source, but they did say they no longer want the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. So we're looking basically at the end of the U.S. dollar as we know it. Now, people say, what's going to replace it? Well, there's going to be a thing called the Amero currency. Of course, they got to talk Canada into it. That would deal with the Amero. Called the Amero currency, would deal with the Canadian dollar, the U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso. At this point, Canada is a little reluctant because their currency is the only one worth anything. Their banking system, like the French banking system, didn't get unloaded on by the derivative meltdown. So, you know, again, we want to get back to Jeb Bush and the medical supply thing.
Tom, how much is China holding, do you estimate, in these artificial derivatives and the illegal mortgages that were created that were tied to a bunch of these securities?
They're not really worth anything, but there's quadrillions of dollars worth of these derivatives. And Obama, to give people an example, the history of these things. You first had the Clinton administration set these things up with Robert Rubin at 5-to-1 leverage. That means you can create more derivatives out of the original derivative. Sounds good. Financial products, they call it, mortgages. It was all based on real estate prices continue to go up. The Bush fraud, of course, took it to 20-to-1. That led to the train wreck, of course. You can't go 20-to-1 leverage on anything, or you're going to wind up with a massive train wreck. And, of course, the Bush fraud allowed the U.S. Treasury to be looted on behalf of his campaign contributors, the Enron gang, the Pioneer List, the whole bunch. What Obama's solution to these derivatives is, originally, was he got advice from the former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker to basically nationalize the banks for a short period of time. Once that nationalization was complete, they could use Promise software to examine where this derivative fraud took place and where that offshore money was. He could then prosecute the people through the bankruptcy court on behalf of the shareholders to find out who looted the Treasury, which, of course, are the Bushes and the Clintons. Robert Rubin, Henry Paulson, Timothy Geithner, Christopher Cox, this whole bunch of filth. Instead of doing that, he appointed Timothy Geithner to be his Treasury Secretary. And what we wound up with, folks, a new derivative program called Black Scholes, Black Swan, which is based on a massive amount of printing of money, which is now taking the derivative leverage ratio, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, 40-to-1. 40-to-1.
Now, Tom, we've got Citibank, Merrill Lynch, Citicorp, or Citibank, Citicorp, Bank of America, and AIG right in the middle of this whole mess. And, of course, the trading firm, Goldman Sachs. They're all involved in this massive fraud, aren't they?
Well, yes, they are. And, of course, Goldman Sachs was bailed out by the U.S. taxpayer. I mean, trillions of dollars by Bush fraud and by Obama, basically giving these people money to basically compound their derivatives. That's what they did. Trade the market, make money for themselves. They're not lending money to the American people. This is a fiasco. And the American media, which is compromised by all this, people like Morton Zuckerman, who appears regularly on cable TV, a big Bush-Clinton crime family spokesman, he was not only involved in the Bernard Barmana scheme, he was one of the key, what would you call it, wheelers and dealers when it came to the derivatives. And he's not even an American, he's a Canadian. And of course, when he lost his money,